Did I?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, I could have. I'm pretty sure
I don't disagree, though.
I don't hate men.
I thought I said don't like men, but maybe
I don't hate men.
they feel unsafe around men.
Or just distrust.
But also the bathroom scenario as compared to the forest scenario, I'm picturing two different men in my head. Someone who would be isolated in a forest versus someone who's just in a bathroom, which everyone goes to the restroom every day.
I do think it's fair to say that a lot of women are like distrusting and maybe a little bit afraid of strange men that they don't know.
Okay.
I
mean,
just
they
don't
perhaps.
understand
But I mean, I would be afraid of a strange bear I didn't know, right?
Do you know a lot of bears?
Yeah, but do I need to know a lot of bears to know that I'd be distrustful of a wild animal who was a giant bear? Do I need to know them? I don't understand.
Brian
do I need
was
to have an interpersonal relationship with bears to know how fucking dangerous they are?
Brian was just bringing up the whole point of the conversation and why we were having it basically is that a lot of women are afraid of men.
I think it's just like I said, an opportunity to socially signal. A lot of women just have sort of biases against men.
Why would they be afraid of men anyway? I mean, most of the domestic violence happens from women to men, not from men to women. In fact, there was a meta-analysis that was done on this, which I can send over. Brian can pull it up if you'd like.
Men are 3 times more likely to commit a violent crime than a woman.
No, this is absolutely, well, now hang on. That may be true against other men, but not against women. When it comes to women, you're looking at domestic violence stats. It's absolutely not true.
If you're talking about
meta-analysis done on this. And this was done. Here, I'll pull it up for you right now.
No, domestic violence.
Just so that
correct me if I'm wrong.
You guys have it. It's the difference in frequency of violence and reported injury between relationships with reciprocal and non-reciprocal intimate partner dynamics. Inside of this, it was discovered that men are just far less likely to report that they were the victims of domestic violence because it's demasculating. However, women are the ones who assault men far more than men assault women.
Okay, that's domestic violence, but you can still look up the statistics if you want, but I know that they're correct.
Well,
men are
but if it's
3
not
times more likely to commit a violent crime.
No, they're not. They're not correct. Against women? No, that's not correct. Domestic violence accounts for most. Domestic violence accounts for the overwhelming amount of violence committed towards women.
I'm not saying it's against
street assaults are super rare.
I'm not saying it's against men or women. I mean, it doesn't really matter anyway because either way, the man is still the aggressor, which is the point of the argument. Who he's being aggressive towards isn't the argument, but
no, that's not the point of the argument. The point of the argument is that women distrust men because they consider men to be physical threats. And what I'm saying to you is that while it may be so that they do, that doesn't mean it's justified that they do, because when we look at the statistics on this, it does not appear that their justification is there. For instance, have any of you gals here? Let me finish the question. Calm down. Have any of you gals here had random men just show up and beat you? Has that ever happened to any of you? Just a random guy just shows up and beats you up? Has that ever happened?
No, but assaulted, yes.
Yeah. Not random.
Yeah.
No, that's
women
not, but that's my question.
Yeah. Have you ever been assaulted?
This is why it's phrased this way, so that you can understand the question. Has a random guy walked over and beat you up?
No.
No. Has that ever happened? Show of hands if that's happened to any women.
Yes. Assaulted, yes. And you can be afraid of
listen, that's not my question.
No, the answer is no. Have you seen a woman go up to a random man and beat him?
It's not my question. Answer my question. Don't ask me one before it's answered.
No.
Show of hands for the women here who've had a random guy just show up and beat them up.
And beat them up specifically?
Yeah.
No other type of assault?
No.
You're not going to accept any other action?
Okay, hang on. Just before you go into but this other thing happened, just bear with the actual question. Holy shit, don't divert. Don't ask something different. Just answer the question. It's not that hard. So since that's never happened to any of you, you understand that this actually is rare that this happens at all to any women outside of a domestic situation. So that's why we look at the domestic violence stats, because that's going to be the overwhelming amount of these types of abuses. And it seems that the threat of men is wildly overplayed in society towards women.
Is
That's not what
sexual
I'm scared
assault
of.
not a form of violence?
That's what I'm
Like
scared
maybe
of.
they're not beating
Oh
you.
no,
then it's-
well, if you want to get into essays, then let's talk about the fact that there's so many female teachers who essay their students.
Okay.
Do you want to get into the stats on that?
That's not Alone in the Woods, though.
PR Aquatic donated $200. Do you think you have better chances of surviving with a polar bear or a man in the wild?
Man in the wild.
Here's the thing.
Hold on. Answer. Let's do this.
A man in the wild.
Let's do this. Answer the polar bear one.
Man.
Pick the polar bear or man.
A man, I guess.
To survive a man.
Okay.
Well, polar bears are the most
But
aggressive.
that's not what I'm
pair.
scared
Yeah.
of. I'm specifically scared of getting essayed by the man in the forest alone.
So what? Okay, that's a possibility. What are the?
Because I don't really think a bear is capable.
What
of doing
percentage of
that.
men do you think would do that? Because okay, so you're being in the man versus bear thing. You're being assigned a totally random man. So based on that, you're having to make some assumptions there about the probability of any given random man doing that. What do you think that the frequency is of men doing that?
Well,
50%?
I'm picturing like the fact that he is in the woods alone is
You're
already
overthinking
weird.
it. You're overthinking it. Let's just the motivations of why he's in the woods are relevant.
Like he's not home with his kids. He's not with
It's
his
just,
wife.
you're both randomly spawned.
You're just
Random.
you randomly spawn in the woods.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's less of a chance for
It
sure.
randomly it randomly selects out of the what?
But you get what I'm picturing,
150
right? Like an
million
axe murderer type dude.
It could be. What percentage of men
You
are axe
don't know.
murderers?
That's the thing. You have to
You
just.
don't know.
But
Yeah.
chances.
the thing is if we're talking about why men are afraid of women, it's because I can't speak for
Wait,
what
why men are afraid of.
or why women are
I was like, wait,
afraid of
what?
men. Sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
I could almost bet that every woman at this table, or I know like at least 99% of the women I know in my life have been a victim to a man in some form, whether it was sexually or physically. They're kind of the same thing, but in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, whether they're an
Sexual
OF
assault.
worker
Yeah,
or a
but
sex worker
I don't,
or not.
But I don't believe it. So here's the
don't
thing,
believe it.
right? Like I don't actually
100%
believe that
of
this is
women
so.
have been-
What I think happens
said 99.
instead, and the stats bear this out as well, is that things which women would consider to be SA, men just simply do not. So for instance, unwarranted touching by women towards men just disregard it, whereas women will often freak out about it. So I'm not so, and by the way, I also have the Cardinal Wilson rule, and here's the Cardinal Wilson rule. If there was no police report, I don't fucking believe you. That's my actual rule. If there was no police report, right, then I think that the chances that it actually happened in a significant
Chances
way
split.
are not true. That's my own personal rule for this.
Well, even if
I think
there's
there's
no
no
police
arguing with that
report,
logic.
it's not going to get processed. It just sits on in most
Yeah,
states. It just,
been there, done that.
Well, okay, but there's still a report, right?
Yeah, no, I'm saying
Yeah.
that.
So that's the thing is like that's my rule, right? Is that there's so many of these which end up being unfounded. The women won't say the name of the person, and
Well,
this
there's,
is
like,
I think the
psychological
reason that the
warfare
women
going
won't
on.
come forward with the names of these supposed essay assaulters is because then that man would have an opportunity to refute those charges. And so they don't want to do that because it would actually be a false allegation.
It's
so what they do is they say,
traumatizing
no,
to
I had
relive
this
the
happen to me.
experience.
And you ask for details. You say, well, where, when, why, how did that happen?
You don't always
and suddenly,
have proof of
hang
it.
on, let me finish. I'm almost done. And then suddenly the details go right out the window. And they won't name who these people are. They won't tell you that there was a police report. They won't say any of those things. So I struggle myself to believe that a lot of women are telling the truth about these situations.
As a man, you are more likely to be raped yourself than you are to be wrongfully accused of doing so.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Our word is
But
our
you
bond.
are more
Woman
likely to
or
be
man?
assaulted yourself than you are to be wrongfully accused of doing so.
I don't know if there's data
No,
on
there's
that.
the
You wanna look it
evidence
up?
for this is extremely scant, in fact. So the thing is that while it is, I think I could even grant this and still destroy the argument. So even if I granted that that was true, then there's still a huge swath of women who will make the claim that they were essayed by men, but not give any particulars. So there's no way for us to make a determined verification that it's so.
Is there?
So I'm not sure that that stat would even be valid
Where are you coming up with your stat of all these women who are alive? Like, what's the validity
My
in that?
stat
Just
of what?
you feel that way? Like, what?
Do you want me to repeat what I just said?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so what I said is I'm not sure that we can say that this stat could ever be completely true that you just reference about SA either direction. And the reason is because by your logic, there's tons and tons of women, right, who are SA'd, but they don't come forward with the fact that they were SA'd, right?
Sexual
So if
assault
that is
can-
true,
Sure,
then
but that's
logically
not
would
really
not
what
the same be true for men? I guess that's my question.
That guy Slingshot donated $199. And to go further on what Andrew said, those who wait 10 or 15 years to say something about SA, which usually is with a celebrity, I think is nothing more than a money grab in most cases.
In those,
agree.
In those
Could be
cases, I think
regret.
it is more likely for false allegations to come. But just because a woman doesn't report an assault doesn't mean it didn't happen. And I
Sure.
think that's a very dangerous mindset to have, to
I think
automatically
it's
not
the
agree
least
a
dangerous
woman
mindset to have.
just because there wasn't a police report filed. And by the way, there's different types of sexual assault that isn't our wording. There's other things as well. So.
No, I agree. But then when we get into the particulars of those things, what we
So-
find out is that men often will disregard what women will consider to be SA, even though the same exact thing is happening to them in reverse by women. That's point one. Point two is that if it's not reported, then how can we count it as being true? We just basically have to take people's words for it. There's no real reason that we should do that absent evidence. That would be the opposite of how we should conduct any type of study into the SA phenomenon.
You're not referring to children, are you? Just women?
Yeah, I'm talking about women here
Okay.
who are adults. So when we're talking about adult women, this is just my cardinal rule that I have, is that tons and tons of women who I've talked to have these SA stories, but however, when pressed for particulars, suddenly the story completely falls apart. Most notably, the fact that they won't name the men who supposedly did this to them. Interestingly enough, I think that the logical reason that I came to for why they do not, is because if they named that man, you'd find out that he was in Kentucky while she was in Wyoming and she was full of shit. That's my personal feeling on the thing.
Can I say one thing? So, I guess the biggest thing is that I don't have the numbers, and it would be hard to find proper numbers on this anyway. But a lot of now women were sexually assaulted when they were children. And that's
What?
when it took place. If we're talking about children,
We're not talking about
Yeah,
No,
but
I
even
think,
in-
I think what
about
even in-
children.
the point
that's
that
child
so-
abuse. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
whole different
so-
conversation.
So in this particular case, we can leave that to the side, right? I'm talking about women who are making the claims of being SA as adults. We're being hyper specific here. We're not talking about the cases of children, though I'd be happy to get into it. We're not going to because it's YouTube and it's TOS. I'm talking specifically about adult women. So this is from my perspective. If I look at this logically, if somebody makes an accusation, says such thing happened to me, but there's no evidence for it, that would be, a secularist would never, for instance, accept that from a Christian saying, oh, God talked to me, but I can't prove it, and I can't demonstrate it, and I can't show it. So why is it in the world should we accept the counter from women that they make these bold claims that this and that happened to them, absent any evidence that it did?
I'm probably going to get a lot of woman hate from this, but I actually agree with Andrew 100%, at least 95%, because I personally do know a lot of women who have made these claims just because they regret it afterwards. And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's almost become like this fucked up trend, just like people think it's cool now to have like some type of mental disorder where it's like, oh, like I'm a victim. Like it's cool to be a victim. And
Well put.
that pisses me off. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
It pisses me
Well,
off.
it should. And the truth is that if you follow behavior in voting by women and you follow trends in buying by women, you will note that peer pressure, even towards things which are not considered to be great, if it brings women attention, they will follow trends which are not even good for them to follow.
Agreed.
This now, men do this too. I'm not being biased here and saying it's only women. I'm just saying that women are more prone to that. That's why propaganda works so well on them. That's how they were able to get an entire generation of women to begin smoking was because they were so susceptible to that propaganda. So I would actually have to agree with you as well that as I look at this, it's hard for me to believe that the kind of rampant stats on what is considered SA are anything short of lies, essentially, absent proof.
And Andrew, I'm sure you could agree with me on this. I think we both think here that SA is an absolutely terrible thing, awful thing.
Awful thing. Put them against the wall, as they say.
Yeah. I do think, though, that there is
but that's why the burden of proof should be so high. The burden of proof should be so high because the punishment should be so overwhelming. So the punishment for something like this should be overwhelming towards a man who conducts this. And that's why we should be very careful about the particulars of how justice is served up here. And we should have evidence for this so that we can definitely put these people where they belong, which is in prison for life.
Yeah.
And they have done, they have looked at an analysis, comparing this to other crimes, and what they found to be provably false, where the woman either recanted the story and there was proof that he was somewhere else, or she, I think I already said she recanted it, or she proved that she was lying. In comparison to other kinds of crime reports, the rate, I think, is 2x or even 3x the rate of false accusations of other kinds of crimes. And then I specifically actually want to point out something that happens to minority men at even further disproportionate rates. I don't know if you know the case of Emmett Till, the boy who was falsely accused by a white woman back in I believe it was in the 50s or and they lynched him.
Okay, wait.
Wait.
Okay, well, I'll just be quiet there.
Oh.
We're not exactly sure that it was. I've heard it conflicted as to.
My understanding on her.
There's no proof, though.
My understanding on her deathbed, this woman on her deathbed, the woman who accused it, recanted and said that she made it up. At least that's the research that I did.
I remember reading that
maybe,
too. Yeah.
I could be wrong there. I don't want to throw shade at anybody unless I know for sure that it's true. So,
if my research serves me correct, I do believe that she later in her life she said, I either embellished, I exaggerated, or I just made the whole thing up. But what happened to Emmett Till, this young black boy, he apparently flirted, said something lascivious to a white woman, and her family or friends, whatever, I don't know the exact details, lynched him, killed him. And so false accusations happen all the time, and they actually specifically tend to negatively.
She was jealous of someone else.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, he had.
But this actually happens at higher rates too. Typically, when you see white woman, black man, it happens at a much higher frequency. It happened to Patrice O'Neill, rest in peace. Happens to frequently black men because there's an added level, at least for some of these white women who, for example, have consensual sex with them, and then they regret it for, there's perhaps racist reasons for it. But there's a component of regret here. They regret it. Like if you hook up with somebody consensually and you later regret it, that's not SA.
No, it's not.
But you can
see this. We can also see this same trend happen with the lies of paternity, which is far more prevalent than previously was understood with DNA testing. So now we know that the amount of paternity fraud is, in some cases it's been estimated as high as 20%. I think that might be a wildly high estimate, to be honest with you. And I think that the evidence for that is somewhat scant. But it's definitely more prevalent than we thought it was. There's no doubt that that's true. We're not saying that SA against women may not be prevalent from men. It probably is. We're just disputing as to whether or not the justification for why you should not be around men based on these kind of wildly inflated numbers is justified. That's the point we're making.
What if we talk about biology and the fact that men are a lot stronger than women? And so I would, let's say, if I had to choose, obviously, to fight a woman or a man, I'm going to choose the woman because I wouldn't be able to protect myself against a man. that wanted to harm
Yeah,
me.
sure, but nobody would dispute that. This is why the question was about a bear or a man. Bear is
Well, it's
obviously
just a factor that
much,
plays into
but a
it.
bear is obviously much stronger than a man, right?
I said I
much
would rather
stronger.
be a man, but
Yeah, but we weren't making the comparison as to whether or not men are stronger than women. Obviously, that's true. Generally speaking, that's true. Even weaker men are stronger than even strong women in many cases. So, I mean, we wouldn't dispute this, but that would not lead to the conclusion that that means that the prevalence of SA as advertised is as high as it's advertised.
that,
I don't know. Back to the bear thing, though. I feel like
I don't want anything to do with that.
if women were truly this scared of men, as they love to pretend they are, like there wouldn't be such rampant casual sex occurring. They wouldn't be getting drunk around men, partying, being alone with men, having male friends, all this stuff. So I don't know. It seems like logic would dictate that a man would be safer than a bear, but
It's sad to say, but honestly, like you're far more likely to be, assaulted by someone you know than
Yeah.
someone you don't know, like a strange man.
that's a
you
good
know.
point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It's like, would you?
I agree that but the predatory behavior in that regard works both ways. For instance, I have
I
the
said
data
somebody-
here as well when you're talking about, for instance, women who are in positions of authority over men, which would include minors inside of prison, where there's female prison guards, the SA skyrockets in comparison to the other way. The same thing happens when you're talking about teachers, for instance. Even when you're talking about clergy, while it's true that more men conduct these things, as a percentage of how many are in these positions, women conduct them against men far more, which is interesting. So I'm not so willing to just say that this is a problem which comes from men and only men.
I'm not saying it is. Why do you think it is that it's more prevalent for women, or like let's say teachers, to prey on male students? I'm just
Well,
wondering. Like, I'm just.
this is an interesting question.
Close to child abuse.
I'm not so sure that anybody knows exactly why, but I think it's due to the fact of basically being able to manipulate and gain attention. But it's hard to say. This is a phenomenon which may have been going on for a long time, just kind of unrecognized because, again, when we're talking about SA, this is one of my points when I say that men often will disregard things that women would consider SA. There's a lot, and this is the truth. Nobody's going to like to hear this, but there are young men probably who are 16, 17 years old who bang their teacher and aren't upset about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably just true.
That's
So,
grooming, though.
I
That's
do-
not okay for
It's
those
not
men.
okay.
That's
Hold
not.
on.
That's
Okay.
they were 100% groomed.
No, I'm
and
not disputing
assaulted.
that. I'm not disputing that it is. I'm saying that the way that it would be perceived by a male versus how it's perceived by women are different. And that's why I'm saying that we can't hold the
He was
dualistic
answering my
standard when it
question.
comes
Oh,
to
okay.
this.